Okay, we're back. This is actually much more enjoyable than I thought it would be. Hey, can we just give a shout out for the day? It's like a perfect day. It's like 77. It's freezing inside. It's the only reason why I'm not inside. It's freezing inside, but it's so nice. It's overcast, it's gray, it's a breeze, fall, birds are out here, falling leaves. Thank you for being here with me, whoever's here. Okay. Continuing. There is a scripture about falling in love with the world. I think that's what I did. Trying to save her so that she would love me and finally give me what I longed for my entire life: acceptance. Weighty love that made up for all of my insecurities and shortcomings. Oh my God. This is so great. Thought I had my hat on, so I was sitting here trying to grab my hat. Doesn't exist. This is so great. I love this. I'm not going to try to break that down right now. It says what it needs to say. I need to describe the onset of my symptoms in detail. Oh, okay, so this is talking about getting sick in 2016. The loss of senses, the confusion of memory, the inability to speak, the dreams, the questioning of identity and purpose, as if this event was engineered to create a system, in quotations, that would cause me to re examine, reevaluate, and eventually transform myself like the caterpillar. Oh, and then I remembered I've had an infatuation with caterpillars since kindergarten. I actually remember being in kindergarten on a playground discovering caterpillars for the first time. I was 4. I remember it like it was yesterday. The playground was red, and there was a caterpillar crawling on one of the bars or whatever I was climbing on, black and yellow. And I became infatuated. I think I tried to bring one of those caterpillars home. At least I played with it every time I went to recess. I had completely forgotten about that. And all of a sudden it just came back to me. It's crazy. The caterpillars in kindergarten on the playground. Create moments in each chapter, these experience wells that I can fall into only to emerge with greater insight and understanding. I think that's brilliant. So within each chapter, I need experience wells, maybe 3 per chapter, like that. Next, my history with dreaming. How real, how consuming, how I feel before, during, and after. So there's this whole thing in my childhood. I had these night terrors, I think it's actually called now. But it was just my dream life. My dream life was so aggressive as a kid. And from my dream life, separate and apart from how crazy it was, from it, I created a narrative to explain it that said, I am uniquely gifted by God to do this amazing thing in the universe. But the dark forces are trying to keep me from being encouraged. So they're coming to me through my dreams to try to intimidate me, to keep me from living this fabulous life that I was destined to. And so it started out as dream life, but it became real life. By the time I graduate high school or become a high school student, if I walked through my house at nighttime with the windows, I would duck under the windows and then try to close the window because I thought, as a result of what I deduced about my life from my dreams, right, that There were snipers outside my house, hiding in trees, waiting for me to walk past the window to kill me. Now, if that doesn't sound like Mr. Robot, at least Mr. Robot. But that was literally my life. Never told anybody about this, right? Not until I became grown. But to grow up like that, nuts. So I had to talk about what I dreamed about, how I felt the next day, and how I wasn't sure the next day whether what I dreamed was real. The 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 level of reality in my dreams. And for whatever reason, usually I dream about mundane things like walking around my house. So I dream I like walk from my bedroom to the living room, something would happen, and I would notice shadows and the darkness within the darkness. And so if I would wake up in the middle of the night, I would try to parse out shadows in my room from the street light or the moon shining in through my window and try to determine what was natural shadow and what was darkness. Like there was within the shadows this whole conspiracy of darker shadows that represented these forces that were trying to intimidate me. And so, in and out of my dreams, I would go, and usually those dreams that weren't as calm, I would be chased by some type of monster. I never would actually wake up with a clear vision of what the monster looked like, but it was some type of like werewolf kind of monster that was always chasing me and always close to me. And sometimes it would catch me. And I remember sometimes it would catch like I would be running and it would like catch my hand in a backswing, and I could feel the nails of whatever the creature was in my hand. And when I'd wake up, I'd have like this pain in my hand. And now I'm up now, but I can feel still the pain of having been ripped by this monster. And so I would wake up and cut the light on to see. Sometimes my hand would be red, but I would always feel this pain. It would take a while. So when I was a little kid growing up, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, I would actually call my dad, Daddy. That was like a thing in my whole house. Everybody in my house, of course, found out about this because I literally would call out and ask my dad to come and rescue me in the middle of my dream. I, luckily, our rooms were on the same side of the house. So you walk through my room. If you remember in the first book, I talk about where my room is positioned in the house. Well, the room is kind of like the center of the back of the house. So you'd walk in the front door, go through the little, I wouldn't call it a foyer because there's nothing foyer about it. It was a hallway, right? Walking to the house to the front door. You turn down this main hallway, and my room was at the end of that hall. It used to be my parents' room, but it became uh, my room. Uh, yeah. Anyway, our rooms were next to each other, so I could call him, and he would come. And there's this whole thing. I self soothed as a baby. They said that when I was a baby, they put me in my crib and they would leave, and I would rock myself to sleep. I actually did this for many years. In some ways, I still do this. I rock myself to sleep, to soothe myself, to get myself to go to sleep. They said I would rock so hard that the crib that had been on one side of the room when they left me, when they come back, it was clear on the other side of the room. This is a true story. Of course, I don't remember this. I was a baby. But as my life develops, my parents, particularly my dad, he took a lot of interest in it because he's a dreamer too. We never talked much about dreams, but he's a dreamer too. And a lot of what I have, I inherited from him. Him and I think my maternal grandmother. I think she was a dreamer too. I don't know how I know this, but I just, from the stories that I heard about her, I believe that she was a dreamer also. So I get it. I get it from both sides of my family. But I think my dad told me these little vignettes about my childhood in order to get me to appreciate myself and to not think it's strange as I begin to discover myself that this is something that just was a part of who I've been. And I think he was trying to normalize it for me. Not that it not that it seems normal now. It seems everything but normal now, but somehow it worked. And I guess that's what I really want to conclude in the book. As ridiculous as so many of my strategies that I used to construct my identity and my path and my sense of destiny and fate and God and all this, it worked. And that's kind of the takeaway of the whole book. I don't think it matters whether any of this is rational, logical, reasonable, fantastical. I don't think it matters. The question is, does it work? And I think in some instance, I may need to come up with some type of rubric to determine what works and what doesn't, and create a system where you can measure this in the now. It doesn't matter so much if 10 years from now I look back on what I was saying now and I say, that's the most ridiculous thing. It doesn't matter if it's ridiculous to me 10 years later. The question is it working for me now? Because now is all that's important, right? If you've gotten here, then you're here. You've made it here, right? And that's new for me. That's new for me. I'm really, really excited about that. Okay. Let's do a little bit more and then we'll stop. Book structure and format. Book two, structure and format. Take the act of rapture. Okay, so in the first book, I took the name of the book is Deliver Yourself from Evil, right? And so the book is about me identifying 5 components of deliverance. I break my process down into 5 stages and I name them. And so the act is deliverance, but the whole thing, I break it down into 5 components. And so and of course, the way I got there was a friend of mine who became my writing coach told me that she noticed that I'd experienced a transformation and she thought I needed to write it down, to publish it, to write it in a book. And because it was important to be able to talk about how you went from where you were to where you are. So that's why I wrote the first book. That's why I'm writing the second book. And so I'm trying to take that same structure, that same idea. And so it says, take the act of rapture, because the second book, in some ways, it's about rapture. It's about highest happiness. It's about bliss, right? Take it and divide it into parts. Steps like you did deliverance, basic actions that are part of life. The 5 basic actions in the first book are performing, winning, loving, choosing, and letting go, right? So those just roll off the top of my tongue because these are all basic functions that are part of my initial step of my growth process. So basically, I'm advocating that I should do the same thing for the second one. One of them should be empower or energize. Now I'm suggesting that perhaps one of these 5 steps of rapture or happiness or defining or deciding that this is your greatest adventure, your greatest fantasy, is about empowerment or energizing. We'll do one more and then we're going to stop. Book 2 thesis. Because the procrastination is another thing about time. Because the procrastination of pulling off becoming the higher self is over. Because the procrastination of pulling off becoming the higher self is over. I think I'm referring here when I say because it's over. Oh, because the procrastination of putting off becoming the higher self is over. And I'm doing this whole thing. I'm trying to speak collectively because I think we're at a place in history where many people are coming to some of the same questions and conclusions that I'm coming to. The pandemic, of course, is helping with that. This whole unplugging from life, this unplugging from routine and having to redefine what it is that makes you you, right? Because some of us have been so work defined and career defined and path defined and drive defined and purpose defined, that now that that whole thing is unplugged, right? The fact that these distractions are out of reach, then the day of putting off, actually focusing on you becoming your authentic self, that's over. We must now learn to evolve and adapt into the authentic version of ourselves the universe has been calling us to be the whole time. I absolutely love that statement. It has to be in the book. We are forced to confront it now because the distractions have been exposed and playtime is over. All right, so we're going to stop this video right there. That was really, really, really good.